You ever stop and think about how your car's wheels can somehow steer left and right and bounce up and down over bumps, all while the engine is still sending power to them? It's a really cool engineering puzzle, right? Well, the solution comes down to two key parts, the classic U-joint and the modern CV joint. Today, we're going to settle the score in this drivetrain showdown. Look, sending power in a perfectly straight line, that's the easy part. A simple, solid spinning shaft will do that all day long. But the second you need to turn the steering wheel or your suspension flexes over a pothole, that perfect straight line is gone. You need something that can bend, that can change angles, and still keep that power flowing without a hiccup. And that right there, that's the core problem that both of these joints were built to solve. So here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with that core power transfer problem. Then we'll meet our two contenders, the old school veteran, the U-joint, and the modern challenger, the CV joint. After that, we'll put them head to head, and finally, figure out why engineers pick one over the other. All right, first up to the plate is the universal joint, or as pretty much everyone calls it, the U-joint. You got to think of this thing as the tough, time-tested champion of getting power where it needs to go. It's a ridiculously strong, beautifully simple design that's been around for, well, for a very long time. And I'm not exaggerating about its age. The basic idea was being talked about way back in the 3rd century BC. It kind of got lost to history for a while, then was rediscovered in the 1500s by a guy named Girolamo Cardano, which is why you'll still hear mechanics call it a cardan joint. It finally got patented for cars in 1903. So yeah, this isn't just old tech, this is like foundational engineering stuff. And its design is just beautifully simple. I mean, it's really just a couple of key parts. You've got this central piece, it looks like a plus sign, called the cross or spider. That connects to two yokes, which look like little forks, and those attach to the drive shafts. The whole thing pivots on these tiny little needle bearings. That's it. And because it's so simple, it is incredibly strong and can handle a ton of torque. But, and this is a big but, here's the U-joint's fatal flaw. Because of that simple cross shape, when it's bent at an angle, the output shaft doesn't spin at the exact same speed as the input shaft. Get this, it actually speeds up and slows down, twice for every single rotation. It's this weird little pulse. We call this non-constant velocity, and it is the U-joint's single biggest weakness. So what does that actually feel like when you're driving? It's not just some theory on paper, you can literally feel it. Like this mechanic from Leggett's Garage says, if you're in a 4x4 and you make a really sharp turn on pavement, you feel this weird binding, this hopping sensation. That's it. That's the U-joint's fluctuating speed in the real world. Okay, so to get rid of that hopping and binding, engineers needed something a little more sophisticated. And that's where our challenger comes in, the constant velocity joint, or CV joint. Its name tells you everything you need to know. Its one and only job is to deliver perfectly smooth, constant power, no matter what angle it's at. So how in the world does it do that? Well, instead of a simple cross, a CV joint is way more complex inside. It's got these two grooved housings, called races, with a set of big steel balls sandwiched between them. A special cage holds these balls in a really precise position. As the joint angles, the balls just roll in their grooves, transferring power seamlessly. The end result? The output speed is always the same as the input speed. No fluctuations, no vibration, no hop. But all that beautiful, complex engineering has an Achilles heel, and it's this humble-looking rubber boot. See, this boot is packed with a special grease that those internal parts absolutely need to live. If this boot gets a tiny tear from a rock or just gets old and cracks, that grease gets flung out and all kinds of dirt and water get in. And once that happens, oh man, the joint just eats itself alive, and it happens fast. And you know, it's not even a one-size-fits-all thing. If you look at a front-wheel drive car, it's actually got two different kinds of CV joints on each axle shaft. Out by the wheel, you've got a repa joint, and that's the one designed to handle those really crazy angles when you're steering. Then, on the inside, connected to the transmission, there's a tripod joint. It's designed to plunge in and out, letting the axle get longer and shorter as your suspension goes up and down. Pretty clever, right? Okay, so we've met the old school veteran and the modern challenger. Now it's time to put them right next to each other and see how they really stack up. You know, one of the best ways to tell what's going on with your car is just to listen. When a U-joint is on its way out, you'll hear this solid clunk noise, especially when you shift from drive into reverse. It's the sound of slack in the joint. A failing CV joint, though, makes a totally different sound. It's this rhythmic click, 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 click that gets faster and louder the more you turn the steering wheel. It's a very distinct noise. So let's just boil this all down, right? The U-joint, its speed fluctuates, which can make things feel a bit shaky, but its big win is that it's simple, super strong, and cheap. The CV joint, on the other hand, gives you that perfectly smooth, quiet ride, but it's way more complex, costs more, and its whole life really depends on that little rubber boot staying in one piece. So with these really clear pros and cons, how do car designers decide which one to use? Well, it all comes down to that timeless engineering rule. Use the right tool for the right job. And this is exactly why you pretty much always find U-joints on those big, long drive shafts in the back of rear-wheel drive trucks and 4x4s. In that spot, you need brute strength above all else, and the operating angles are pretty small. CV joints, though, they are the absolute go-to for front-wheel drive cars because those front axles have to deal with the wild angles of steering and suspension movement, all while keeping the power delivery silky smooth. And look, this isn't just a bunch of random trivia. This choice, U-joint or CV joint, fundamentally changes a vehicle. It impacts everything from how smooth the ride feels, to how noisy it is, to how you maintain it, and how it performs when the pavement ends. It's one of those core engineering decisions that you can actually feel right there in the driver's seat. So that kind of leaves us with one last question to chew on. In a world where suspensions are getting more and more complex, and electric cars, with their silent, instant torque, demand absolute smoothness, does the ancient, tough, but kind of clunky U-joint really have a future? Or is it finally destined to become a cool relic of automotive history? Something to think about the next time you take a turn.